Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie, and today I wanted to take you on a quick, well, maybe it won't be so quick, but I wanted to take you on a tour of what's going on in my garden. We've done a lot of changes, planted a few things. There's a mess in a few areas, but I wanted to show you what's going on because it is May and it's one of the more exciting times of year. So let's go look and see what I've been doing. Okay, so here we are in my dog run with no dogs, maybe someday. We've actually been mowing the lawn. We mowed it once. The irrigation is turned on. But the exciting part are my new little plants. Now, I came from Southern California and I grew passion fruit that I loved so much. But I thought it would be impossible to grow passion fruit here until I found out about maypops. Now, I've tried maypops several times. They are basically a hardy version of the passion fruit and never really succeeded. So I got some seeds from a guy who is growing maypops very successfully in my area, put them in the refrigerator in moist sand for a couple of months, and then planted them in pots. Now, out of the dozens that I planted, only 3 survived, but 3 survived. So I'm really excited. I'm going to grow them up along this chain link fence. And I added some chicken wire. So we're going to see how well they do. This is on the south side. It's going to stay warm. We are having freezing temperatures at night sometimes, or getting close to freezing, not quite freezing, but getting close to freezing. So I've created a way to cover them overnight so that they don't freeze. And if needs be, I will add some floating row cover to these before I put the pots over the top and see if I can make sure that they don't freeze. So this is one thing I'm very excited about. As you can see, my lawn through here is greening up. We've been putting some water on it. I did one fertilizer. And luckily this year, the weeds haven't been too bad. I do have a stray dandelion here and there. I'm not too worried about a few of them. It's when they overtake the world that I start worrying about them. So when I see dandelions, if there's too many of them, I'll just I'll haul out my 2,4-D, make sure the temperature is below 80 degrees, it's not windy, and I'll just individually spray them. But every once in a while, a little cherry yellow bloom is not bad. I took apart the cold frame at the top of my garden beds because I'm going to be adding a couple of other garden beds. And as you can see, there's been a few changes over in my side yard. We've got the irrigation in. I'll put a link to the video that we made of that up at the top. So the irrigation is done except for adding the drip line, but I'm not going to add the drip line until I'm ready. We've got our piles. This is 13 cubic yards of topsoil. Let me show you the reason I felt like I needed to get some topsoil. So right here, I created a barrier between the old lawn, which is dying because it hasn't had any water, and the lawn that I'm keeping. And I dug a trench. Now, when the person who built this house brought in basic sand as topsoil, it doesn't hold any water. It's really fine sand. And then when you get down to the bottom of the 6-inch layer of sand, I'll show you in just a minute, it's pure rock and clay. So it's not the best soil to plant perennial crops in. Trees and shrubs do absolutely fine. You can see my hill up here, and they're all planted in that soil minus the sandy topsoil. They're just planted in the rocky clay, and they do beautifully. But I want to plant smaller perennials and vegetables and root crops and stuff in this area. And I figure a good 4-inch layer of topsoil will be a big help for that. Now, another thing is that I was worried about is with this dry winter that we had, I thought for sure I lost my hydrangeas. But as you can see, this one is starting to come back, so I may keep that one. I've got a few other plants coming back. I've got my ladder because some hornets built their nest up in the attic vent. I've been spraying that with some Spectracide Pro. I've got one more spray and then I'll put the ladder back. We've got little fruits forming on my currant bush, and look how gorgeous this is. it's growing quite quickly. I love that. The hostas are starting to come up. Now over here, I did lose this hydrangea. This hydrangea is not coming back. This one is coming back very slowly. There's just a few live branches down at the base. And this one, it looks like it's totally lost. So these hydrangeas will be replaced, and I will put something else in their spot. Now the garden area is doing really well, and I'm going to do a separate video on this because there's several different things I want to show you. But one thing that I wanted to show you is we're getting a couple of nights that are in the 30s. And I went ahead and had already planted my tomatoes and peppers. And this is how I'm protecting them. But we'll go over that in another video. The peas do not need protecting from cold weather, so they're okay. This tomato right here, though, is going to get a bucket over it. Don't know if you can see these very well. Let's see if we can get it to focus. Let's pull this out of the way. But we're going to get a bumper crop of peaches. I am really excited. I'm going to need to come out here and start my thinning process. And this tree right here, every year, I think I thin it enough and it always breaks. So I have got to come in here and make sure I thin it really well so I don't lose this last branch. We're also going to get a bumper crop of my Stella cherries. They're looking so good. It's going to be a good fruit year. You can see more over here. This is completely loaded. And we've even, and I don't know if you can see it, we've even got a bunch of our Santa Rosa plums. So this is going to do really well too. Hopefully the birds don't get too many of those. And I think this tree will do much better now that we've removed our aspens. It's going to actually get more sun. Now another thing that makes me really happy is my tree peonies. Look how gorgeous these are. I love these so much. I went to Progressive Plants and I got a new one. This one right here is going to be a red tree peony, and I'm hoping it does well. I'm not sure, I'm going to have to watch the water on it, make sure that it stays wet enough for the first year or two. This one right here does not get any more water other than what I water the hill. I've got these drip lines all along the hill. Yes, I need to get more mulch, but that's going to be coming a little bit later this year. But I water twice a week on this hill, and that's the amount of water this gets. So we may have to add some supplemental water to keep that one going for the first year or so. This is the backside of my apples and my pears, and they overproduced last year, so this year I've only got a few blooms on the apples. But I did read an article and I found out what needs to happen so it doesn't have a really strong alternate bearing habit. What I need to do is go to each bunch of apples. When the flowers form fruit, there's a cluster of fruit. There's usually about 5 fruit per cluster. And I was thinning all of them down to 1 fruit per cluster. But they said in this article, and I wish I could remember where I read it, but they said you need to go through and thin all the apples out of several clusters in a row so it won't bear so heavily that year. That way the next year you'll still get a good crop of apples. So I'm going to have to try that next year, which is going to be its alternate year. My little pistachio tree is leafing out beautifully. I'm really excited about that. It's going to do really well. Then the last thing I want to show you in my backyard is my lilacs. I think this one is called Angel Wings, and I absolutely love it. The flowers on it this year are just glorious. It's completely full. They're pure white. They smell like heaven. Angel Wings is a very good name for it. Look at those flowers. Aren't they gorgeous? Then we have my Sensation Lilac, which is another favorite. Let's get down there, and I want to show you what the flowers look like close up. Now you can see the lilacs peeking over my apples and my pears. And if you watch the video that I'll link above about pruning my apple trees, I was really picky about how much Alex pruned off of my lilac tree because he kept trying to prune more and more off of it. This is the reason why I don't want him pruning those off. Isn't that gorgeous? Let me see if I can get a closer up view of the flowers. Actually, I think it'll be easier to show you the view of this lilac. They're the exact same variety. They're called Sensation, and the flowers are variegated. If you can see close up, if it'll stop moving and focus. See if we can get it to stop moving. But you can kind of see that the flowers are variegated. They've got white edges to them. They are absolutely gorgeous. So I love this time of year because of the lilacs. There, now you can see a good view of that. I love the color. Now here's my last lilac that's in bloom. And this is another one of my favorites. So I guess all three varieties that I have are my favorites. You know how that goes. But look at the color on this. It's a dark purple. I don't know let me see, it's not in focus again because it's moving. But it's a dark purple and it smells heavenly. This one blooms really heavily every year. Now I've done video, I'll see if I can find a video on how to prune lilacs. But what you need to do is go in and remove the oldest, largest branches every year in the spring after they've finished blooming. That way you don't prune off the new blooms. Now this one is actually starting to block the gate a little bit, so I may need to come in and do a little heavier prune on this side. Let's get a view of the full bush. And this one also scents up the entire front yard. And I absolutely love lilacs. Now I also wanted to show you my grapes. I did a grape pruning video, and since then these have started to grow. So this is a Hemrod Grape, and you can see that this is a pretty vigorous cordon, but it ends right here. So this one will probably need to be replaced next year. As you can see, I left this little stump right here, and we're getting a really good strong bud. So this may be my cordon for next year. You definitely can start planning this early for how you're going to be replacing your cordons. Got another young, healthy one that I just replaced this year, right here. It's budding up really nicely. This one is starting to bud up. Definitely needs to be replaced. And then we need to get another one for the top branches. So we're just going to watch down here and see if we get any good new growth to replace these for next year. My raspberries are starting to come in, and I thought I was just going to pull them all out this year. I have terrible problems with raspberry cane borer, and it's making it so that I really don't get a good harvest very often. And I'm really lazy, and I don't want to spray, and I don't want to come in and cut off the tips, because it's just, I don't have the time to come out and look at it every day. So if these don't do well this year, this may be their last year. This is my Concord Grape. We've got good strong cordons on this side. And then look at this. I think this will end up being the cordon for this side, for the bottom. So we've got that one going strong right there. And then we've got a good strong one starting right here. So these are why I leave these little stumps, so that we can get buds, good strong buds growing at the end to replace the cordons. And this one is already starting to flower. Can you see all those flowers? You can even see them down. You can even see them down here. This is a flower bed right there. It's really exciting. Grapes for this year are going to be good. Now let's look at my Candace Grape. We cut off all the old cordons for the first time ever, and this is probably at least a 12-year-old plant. I lose track of how many years I've had things in the ground. But this side is doing really well. You can see all the new growth coming off of the new cordons. This one, however, does really well till about halfway through, and then the end is dying. So I need to figure out, what I'm going to do about that. Maybe I'll get some good new growth. It doesn't look super strong, but I do have a bud right there. And then I've also got to get a bud to replace the bottom one. So we'll see what happens. Aha! I don't know if you can see it right there. We're getting a little bud down here too. So we'll see if we can get the growth we need to replace the last cordon and maybe replace this one also. Another thing I could do is I can come in and I can cut this, the dead part of the cane off, and then just allow this to continue to grow and use this one to take it all the way to the end. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. So that's just kind of a quick overview of what's going on with my grapes. Now my rosemary is blooming late again this year. I still need to come in and cut out the dead. So there's some dead down here. It was such a hard winter on plants. It was not that cold, but it was so dry. Then we've got all the dead down here that needs to be cut off. And there's some dead in there. Now this area has changed up quite a bit. The barrier that you saw in the backyard was pulled out of this front area here. So I had a barrier to keep the grass out of this area, out of this flower bed, and it worked pretty well. There was one area right through here that the grass had crept through. You could kind of see where the grass is and where the barrier was. But I repurposed that, tore out all my lavender. You can see the truck marks. It completely crushed these lilies, but that's okay. They will come back, and we have some more left over right there. It crushed my geum, and that one's not coming back, but that's okay. We're going to be replacing a lot of this. But he was really funny. It was a giant dump truck full of dirt, and he came over here and he said, "Oh no," he says, "I don't want to crush your flowers." And I said, "Well, these flowers can be replaced also, and these are ones that will come back even if you do crush them." But he was very careful and totally missed these. He was very proud of himself for doing it. I've got a tiny little peony, and I'll put my video up at the top on when I planted these peonies. So there's a tiny little peony coming up there. I've had to water by hand, and this is a really hard bed to water by hand, so we got some runoff. I am going to be replacing the drip irrigation in this bed probably next Saturday. I'm going to take the week to spread the dirt in the back, and then it's going to be irrigation time. So we've just got a bunch of little things here. I left some lavender seedlings. These are all seedlings from the lavender that was growing here. And I left them so that next spring, when I start planting in earnest in the front yard, if I want to transplant these and use these, I'll have them. I think there's 6 of them in total. There's a few more over here. Got all my strawberries that are spreading like crazy. Some little tiny species tulips. I can't remember exactly what kind of tulip they are, but they're not your normal everyday tulips. There's one way back in the back. And I'll show you a few more. We've got them scattered all over. My autumn Jubilee 9 bark is doing well. Took out my butterfly bush, and this whole area is going to change. We'll see. We're going to put something fun in here. We'll probably leave a few of these things, but it'll be fun. And I think most of the planting for this area will be next year. As you can see, I cut out all the old irrigation. I decided to leave the main structure, and what I'm going to do is just use connectors and connect to this structure right here. I'm also going to run a drip line. This goes under the fence, and this used to feed the garden beds, but the garden beds are on their own zone right now. So instead what I'm going to do is connect the grapevines to this system and disconnect the grapes from the garden beds. The garden beds need to be watered 3 to 4 times a week. The grapevines only really need once or twice a week. So that will be the same as this bed here. So we've still got that to do. This irrigation tube is cut and still ready to go. I've got a contractor already waiting to come in July, and we're going to finish the hardscape portion of the front yard before I do any planting. I don't think there's anything else that I'm going to be tearing out. I think that's pretty much done. We've just got to get the hardscape in, the irrigation in, and then we can plant probably next year, or maybe a little bit in the fall. So it's going to be fun. Last of all, I'm going to show you my newest flower bed. And I thought I had lost a bunch of stuff in here, but I didn't. And let me show you how everything's doing. Now I've got to come in and cut back all my grape hyacinths, all the flower heads, so they don't set seeds and, and spread themselves all over the place. But this is one of my new ones. I found another Daphne. This one's a Carol Mackey Daphne, and I'm hoping it does okay. So this one should get, at least 6 feet wide and about 3 feet tall. But here are all my other little tulips. They're so sweet. They're really pretty. And they last quite a long time. These have been up for a couple of weeks at least, maybe a little bit more. We've even got another bud getting ready to bloom right down there. The St. John's wort that I was worried about is coming up, and it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. We've got lilies coming up everywhere. The grasses did not die. They're coming back. These are switchgrass. I think it's called rosselbrush. I was really, really worried about my chaste tree. But if you can see, if I can get my shadows out of here, as you can see, isn't that pretty? It's starting to come back, and it's coming back really heavily at the base. This is another one of my new peonies, getting ready to bloom. I am so excited to see which one this is, because I've totally forgotten. And this is another new one, and I am so worried about it. It came out of a greenhouse. It wasn't outside, and immediately got hit by 40-mile-an-hour winds and really cold temperatures, and it's looking pretty sad. But this is a Golden Falls redbud. All the leaves on this side where the wind was blowing got stripped off. So hopefully this little baby pulls his act together and can survive. We've got some more freezing temperatures coming up, so I may try and protect it. We've got my beautiful irises. Let me get out of the way here so you can see these. These are ever-blooming white irises. And these, I don't know the name. Somebody, I think, said that they are called cat-eye irises, but my wonderful sweet stepmom gave me these, and I think they're absolutely gorgeous, especially up against the white iris. My neon yellow elderberry is doing really well. I have a bunch of the little tiny pugster butterfly bushes through here, and they all lived. This is my front yard pistachio. It's doing really well. And my chokeberry is in full bloom and is gorgeous. And then last of all, this is the end right here. Look how much growth we have on my fig. I'm really excited. And if you look closely down at the base, we're going to have a lot of new branches come up. So I'm excited for a fig harvest this year. And the honeyberry that I'm going to move is also doing really well. So thank you for coming along with me on this adventure. I love this time of year. I love seeing what's starting to grow, and I can't wait to be able to start harvesting some fruits. Now the rest of this week, I'm going to have a couple of more videos. I'm going to do another video on Wednesday and another one on Saturday. And those videos are going to cover permaculture. I've been reading a lot and studying a lot about permaculture, trying to learn about that. I'm going to tell you some of the things I agree with, some of the things that I disagree with, some of the things that I am probably going to try in my yard, and some of the things that do not apply to my yard at all. And then I'm also going to do another video on the tomatoes and peppers that I planted. So I'm looking forward to this week. I hope you join me on this adventure, and I hope you go have a wonderful garden adventure.